The empty hope. I'm sharing this narrative for all you women in your mid to late 40s who might find themselves in a similar situation to mine. Just over a year ago, I stumbled upon an article online that delved into the experiences of women in our age group, seemingly content in their marriages, yet harboring a wish for their husbands to stray. It sounded bizarre to me as well. The peculiarity of it all compelled me to read the entire piece, and little did I know, it would turn my world upside down. The article discussed women who secretly desired their husbands to engage in an affair, providing them with a justifiable reason to end their marriages. Interestingly, these men weren't depicted as abusive, unfaithful, or struggling with any addiction. They weren't lacking in any significant way. Rather, the crux of the issue was that these women had simply lost the spark of love that once tied them to their partners. And it wasn't about seeking romance elsewhere for themselves. It was about no longer feeling connected to the men they had once chosen to spend their lives with. The description hit close to home, mirroring my own life with unsettling accuracy. I began to see my own relationship in a new light. My husband, Alan, is the epitome of kindness. He's a wonderful provider, an exceptional father to our daughter, Joy, and his heart is full of compassion and forgiveness. I have no doubt about his love for me. He would be an ideal best friend, but the romantic flame I once felt has dimmed. I recall the early days, filled with passion and an insatiable desire that seemed only he could satisfy. Yet, after 25 years together, 23 of them married, that intense desire has faded. It's not that I don't love him, I do, but it feels more akin to the love one has for a relative. This revelation weighed on me, leaving me uncertain about how to proceed. This contemplation was ongoing when a close friend visited me one evening, shortly after Alan had returned from work and gone for his regular run to escape the heat. "He's quite the catch, Carmen," she observed, admiring how Alan's affection for me hadn't waned over the years. "It's rare to see, especially at his age. Most are disillusioned with their spouses, seeking solace elsewhere. But his love for you remains as strong as ever." "Isn't that wonderful?" I responded, my lack of enthusiasm evident in my voice. Her concern was immediate. "What's the matter?" she inquired. "Surely, there isn't trouble in your perfect world." "It's not exactly a problem," I began, pulling her by the arm into our home office to show her the article. After she read it, she looked at me, her face breaking into a teasing smile. "You're hoping for Alan to slip up," she said with a chuckle, "just so you have an excuse to leave him. Darling, that's just wild thinking. Maybe you've forgotten what it's like to be on your own. It's been what? Over 20 years. Believe me, being single back then and now are worlds apart. Back then, you were younger, turning heads wherever you went. You chose the brightest, most charming man who crossed your path, fell deeply in love, married, and started a family with him. You caught the prize, my friend. You're living what everyone else dreams of. Seeing your life from the outside, it looks perfect compared to being in your late 40s, divorced, living by yourself, and hardly dating. What you have seems like a fairy tale in comparison. I suppose we always envy what we don't have," I admitted. "The independence seems appealing. Only having to cook for one, being able to travel whenever, with whomever you please. No obligations to anyone. Do you really think that way, Carmen?" she questioned. "If I had to choose someone to settle down with, it would be someone like George Clooney or even your Alan. Among all our friends' husbands, he's genuinely the best." "I'm aware, Patty," I retorted, a bit sharper than intended. "I'm not saying Alan isn't wonderful. He is, he really is. But that's not the issue. The truth is, my feelings for him have changed. Staying here feels like an endless struggle, and I crave freedom. Deep down, I dread the thought of being intimate with him. Yet, I can't bring myself to ask for a divorce. He's too kind, and I can't bear the thought of hurting him, but the spark just isn't there anymore." My voice grew louder with each word, fueled by my frustration. Patty looked shocked, her eyes wide, hand covering her mouth. "Am I that surprising?" I asked. "I thought our friendship meant we could share anything." She pointed behind me silently, and turning around, I saw Alan. The pain in his eyes was palpable, tears streaming down his face. "I just came back for my iPod," he said quietly. "Can't stand running without music." Then, he left for his run. "Why didn't you warn me?" I turned back to Patty, upset. "I didn't mean for him to hear that. I was just venting." Standing there, animatedly gesturing with your arms as you voiced out your discontent. "I didn't even catch a glimpse of him until it was far too late," she recounted. "By that time, you'd already made a significant misstep. It's going to require a considerable effort to mend this situation," I remarked. Patty gave me a look that suggested she thought I was out of my mind. "That man adores you, Carmen." Could you not see the pain in his expression? I merely nodded in response. "My husband Alan is among the most resilient individuals I'm acquainted with. He once completed the final 5 miles of a marathon, enduring severe discomfort, because he was determined to finish, despite an injury to his foot just days before. That kind of perseverance and strength he showed was remarkable." "Carmen, I don't believe you grasp the extent of your actions," Patty expressed. "I'm inclined to think that the article you read swayed your feelings. It's as if you might follow in the footsteps of those who heed certain advice, only to worsen their relationship situations." After Patty departed, my thoughts began to race about what I would say to Alan upon his return. A profound regret washed over me. If only he hadn't overheard my words. Throughout our years together, Alan has always treated me with the utmost care, never once raising his voice in anger. He truly deserved better. Even if I had planned to share my thoughts with him, which I hadn't, I would have chosen a much gentler approach. Roughly 30 minutes post Patty's exit, the house phone rang. Picking it up, I heard, "Hello, Carmen, this is James Peterson. I'm a colleague of Alan's. We have an urgent situation with a client's ventilation system, and since Alan was the designer, we need his expertise immediately. I've attempted his mobile, but it's unavailable. Is he at home?" "No, James, he's out for his run. He'll be back shortly. I'll ensure he gets your message the moment he walks in," I replied. "Thank you, Carmen," he said before disconnecting. Alan returned about 10 minutes later, but the spark in his eyes had dimmed. The vibrant connection we once shared seemed to have faded. He regarded me not with the familiarity of over 2 decades, but as if we were strangers. It was clear he was anticipating some form of communication from me. You received a call from James Peterson," I managed to say, diverting from the real issue at hand. I felt like I was avoiding the inevitable, unsure of what to say or how to express my true feelings. Shortly after, the sound of the shower echoed through the house. Alan always made it a point to clean up after his runs, knowing well my insistence on cleanliness. I had a feeling he would come down ready for some downtime, maybe even share a conversation or two with me. But when he appeared, he was all dressed up, briefcase in hand, as if heading out for a day's work. "I've got to handle an emergency," he informed me. I just nodded in understanding. "Are you sure you don't want something to eat before you go? You must be hungry after your run," I offered. "No time, I'll pick up something on the way," he replied, and with that, he was out the door. The sound of the garage door, followed by the startup of his car, filled the silence he left behind. That unmistakable roar of his car's exhaust, a sound he took pride in, echoed as he drove away. I shrugged off the disappointment and turned to the TV, finding solace in the thought of a quiet evening alone with my favorite shows, free from any critique. Knowing his late return would give me the perfect excuse to feign sleep, I could avoid confronting our issues until later. The next morning, I woke up on the couch, the static buzz of the TV greeting me. Alan hadn't come to wake me, but then I remembered our recent argument and figured it was just as well. It gave me time to think about how to make amends. Planning to bake his favorite cake for when he returned, I hoped we could finally sit down and talk. But first, I thought a hearty breakfast might set the right tone for our conversation, assuming he was even home. As I moved upstairs, the quiet hinted that he hadn't returned yet. The untouched bed confirmed it. Alan hadn't come home at all. Concerned, I checked our voicemail, which was unusually empty, and even his cell went straight to voicemail. I hesitated, then left a simple message, hoping to hear back soon. "Alan, it's me. Please call me when you get this ... by." Alan hadn't called me back, and by the afternoon, my nerves were shot. The only other time he'd disappeared like this was a complete disaster. He had been injured at a client's site and ended up in the hospital. I reached out to his office, desperate for answers. His secretary, Sherry, picked up. Her tone was off, overly formal, not the Sherry I knew who struggled with the phone system when she started and would transfer me to Alan with a laugh or a playful complaint about her coworkers. "Sherry, is the situation handled?" I inquired, trying to sound calm. "Which situation, Mrs. Johnson?" She replied. She never called me Mrs. Johnson. It was always Carmen. Alarm bells rang in my head. "Is Alan there?" I pressed. "He's not available right now," she responded, her tone still too polished. "Can I take a message?" It felt like she was dodging my questions, leaving me in the dark. Was it something at work, or was Alan avoiding me through Sherry? Later, my friend Patty swung by, curious about any updates with Alan. We tried to lighten the mood with some wine as we chatted into the evening. Unexpectedly, my daughter Joy joined us. It was unusual for her to spend her evening away from her fiancé, but I appreciated her company. As we shared a few glasses of wine, I couldn't help but feel she was observing me more than usual, probably waiting for a moment to discuss another wedding expense or something else she and her fiancé needed. Joy excused herself upstairs, returning with several garment bags. I knew she had plenty of clothes still here, often taking loads to her place with Ted. Refilling my glass, I overheard her ask Patty, "Aunt Patty, what's going on with Mom and Dad?" Their whispers halted as I re-entered the room, facing their silent, guilty expressions. "Well," I demanded. Joy finally spoke. "I was asking Aunt Patty about you and Dad." Their sudden secrecy and the day's events left me feeling more isolated and concerned about what was truly happening with Alan. "Sweetie, you've got it all wrong. It's just a big misunderstanding," I tried to assure her. Patty chimed in. "I've been trying to tell her that. Your dad just misinterpreted some things you mentioned, that's all. But how else can you interpret I don't love you anymore?" Joy retorted, rising quickly, clearly upset. I could see the frustration in her eyes. "Please, Joy, don't walk out. Let's talk this through," I pleaded. "There's nothing to talk about," she replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I knew my daughter well. She was upset but putting on a brave face for Patty's sake. It reminded me so much of her father. "No matter what, keep smiling. Joy, I know there's something on your mind. Please, share, I encouraged. Then she let it all out. Where is my mother? What have you done with her? The person who taught me kindness, to everyone, even strangers. Joy, I started to explain. You based your decisions on some random article online, not something credible, and you've hurt the best person I know, she accused, her words sharp with censure. So, your father filled you in, did he? I sighed, realizing the narrative had been set against me, portraying me as the villain simply because I sought happiness. Mom, I didn't hear it from Dad, she said. I went to his office about the wedding photographer's fees. Ted and I just can't stretch our budget that far. Dad was more than willing to cover it, but I could tell something was off. I decided to hang around a bit longer to get to the bottom of it. He suggested I drop the quotes at his office, hinting he either didn't want you to know or he wouldn't be home. He looked devastated, Mom, trying to put on a brave front for my sake. After I left, I lingered outside his office and overheard Shelley telling him his divorce lawyer was on the line. I was stunned. I've seen enough to recognize when someone is going through a hard time. Shelley's tone was so caring, clearly trying to be supportive. I confronted him after that. I asked him straight up what was happening. Do you know what he told me, Mom? She asked, pausing for effect. He said that I had. I started, the conversation taking a turn toward the heart of our family's turmoil. Nothing, Mom, she replied. He just repeated those usual lines about how this isn't about me. That both you and Dad love me, and sometimes in life, things aren't clear-cut right or wrong. People change, he mentioned. But, looking at him, struggling to steady his voice and hold back tears, it made me wonder. So yeah, I picked out a few more of his work outfits since I was around. But honestly, I wanted to see how you were holding up. I thought maybe you'd be feeling it too, and we could figure this out together. But here you are, totally unfazed, enjoying wine with Aunt Patty while Dad's going through a rough time. So, I had to ask her what was happening. Now I know, and I'm on my way out. Mom, I really hope this is what makes you happy. Dad's still dead. He's trying to give you what you've wanted for the last 25 years. But it's true what they say, be careful what you wish for. She moved toward the door. So I'm the villain in this, huh? I inquired. She stopped and shot me a look. What did you expect? She said, I love you, Mom. Dad made sure to remind me of that. His words were, she's your mother and she loves you too. The issue, Mom, is that I'm just not feeling very fond of you at the moment. Joy, wait, I called out. We need to discuss this. I want to talk to your father. I'm not in the mood for talking right now, Mom, she answered. And Dad sent you an email. After she and Patty left, I checked my email. There it was, buried among all the other messages. Dear Carmen, he had written. The day we met still feels like the luckiest day of my life. That hasn't changed. Hearing what I did yesterday was deeply painful, there's no denying it. Yet, even through the pain, I understand your need to voice your feelings and act on them. When this is all said and done, I'll still be grateful for the time we shared. You were an incredible wife, loving, attractive, intelligent, and my best friend. I hope the next person in your life possesses what I lacked and can bring out all those qualities in you once more. Mostly, I wish you had felt you could trust me enough to discuss how you were feeling. That's something else I missed, because I would never have wanted you to stay in a situation that made you unhappy. I truly believed we were happy. As always, I'll do everything to meet your needs. I've instructed my lawyer to initiate the divorce process. I plan to be fair, splitting everything evenly, including the house. However, if you prefer to keep the house, we can include that in the agreement. The one thing I firmly believe is that we need a straightforward end to this. I have no desire to be tied to ongoing payments or financial entanglements. Our attorneys can sort out a lump sum or another fitting arrangement. It would really help if you could spend Saturday with Patty or your friends, allowing me the space to collect my remaining belongings. I hope we can manage this step without dragging our lawyers into it. I plan to stop by after 9 in the morning on Saturday. If you're still around, I won't intrude. Please know that my love for you was wholehearted, and my dearest hope was to spend our twilight years together, basking in the joy of our grandchildren. Since it seems out of reach, I wish for us to conclude this chapter swiftly and with as little discomfort as possible. My lawyer has reassured me that most divorces don't see the inside of a courtroom. With no disputes over custody or child support, our focus should be on settling the financial aspects, signing the documents, and moving forward. Reflecting on the past 25 years fills me with gratitude, though I recognize now some of that may have been self-serving. It's your time now to seek happiness in the coming years. My wish for you is to discover all that you yearn for. With everlasting love, Alan. Reading Alan's letter brought an unexpected sense of relief. Patty had shared tales of her own turbulent divorce from Greg, marked by petty squabbles and prolonged legal battles, making their separation a seemingly endless ordeal. Even after its conclusion, disputes over payments lingered, keeping their animosity alive years beyond their divorce. The peculiar aspect of their post-divorce relationship, known only to me, was their continued, albeit sporadic, encounters. Despite dating others, neither found lasting companionship, often expressing dissatisfaction with their romantic ventures. Yet, they occasionally reconnected for moments of fleeting intimacy, devoid of any deeper commitment or overnight stays. It made me ponder the lengths one might go to for a sense of connection. But Alan's letter signaled his intention for a fair and considerate divorce process. In the following weeks, I found solace in simple pleasures like tending to my garden, despite the looming sale of our home, a thought that brought tears, yet was beyond my control. I hadn't been employed for over 2 decades, leaving me financially unprepared to keep the house. To make it mine, I'd have to compensate Alan for half its value. But realistically, the space was too large for just me. It seemed more likely I'd find myself in a modest apartment, much like Patty's. The thought of moving into her building appealed to me. Having a friend close by could ease me into my newfound single lifestyle. A few weeks into this new chapter of my life, Patty proposed we become roommates. I liked the idea but expressed concern about invading her personal space, especially when it came to her dating life. Patty dismissed my worries, pointing out the financial benefits and the convenience of having me around to help with household tasks during the day. My divorce was finalized shortly after. To celebrate, Patty and I decided to venture out, a change from our usual evenings spent indoors. It was my debut into social life as a newly single woman. We even came up with a plan to signal each other in case one of us found a potential romantic interest. That night at the bar, however, we ended up spending most of our time alone, despite the crowd. The only difference from our usual routine was the setting and the cost of our drinks. Patty attributed our lack of success to the choice of venue, although there were plenty of others around us engaging socially. Perhaps our approach or appearance signaled the wrong message, or maybe we just didn't stand out enough. In the midst of adjusting to single life, I found myself reflecting on my past relationship with Alan, wondering if I could have been more considerate. I pictured him alone, coping in his own way, and felt a pang of guilt. On a whim, I decided to check in on him through our daughter, Joy. When I called, Ted answered and promptly handed the phone to Joy, signaling his reluctance to engage. "Yeah, Mother," Joy answered, her tone detached. I inquired about her father, expressing my concern for his well-being post-divorce and considering reaching out to offer some support. "Mom, Dad's been on a cruise," she explained. "He's been quite distant lately. He purchased a charming house in a lovely area. He's spent time making it his own, and it's turned out beautifully. The place has its own pool, a welcoming deck, everything you could want. It's set on 2 acres, yet he hasn't started on the landscaping. That used to be your specialty. He went through all that effort just to make you happy." Hearing this stirred something inside me, a peculiar sensation I couldn't quite place. "Joy, could you just pass me his number? I'll reach out to him once he's back," I suggested. "Mom, I can't do that," she replied. "I'm not sure he'd be okay with me giving you his number. You know he was deeply affected for a long time by what you said and how everything ended. To you, this might all seem like an exciting chapter. You were seeking freedom, and you found it. But you never experienced the emotional turmoil, Mom. You adjusted to your new life effortlessly. You've even begun seeing someone new. Ted and I spent weeks trying to support Dad, and even more time trying to encourage him to get out and about. I think the only reason he went on the cruise was to avoid being here when your divorce became official. It devastates him, and it's heartbreaking for me to see him so upset over you." The final comment she made really struck a chord with me. She had a point. I had left my husband as if it was nothing more significant than parting ways with a pet fish. "You know what they say, Mom," she mentioned. "Freedom isn't always free. You managed to escape from a man who adored you, and all it took was breaking his heart." Now, I was convinced there was a mix of irony and truth in her words. "When your father gets back from his cruise, ask him to give me a call," I suggested. For the next few weeks, Patty and I spent our evenings out, about 3 or 4 times a week. Patty often ended up leaving with someone, which meant I usually headed back to our apartment by myself. She was so prepared for these evenings that she carried a large bag filled with everything she might need for her journey home. I wondered why she didn't just stay over at someone's place. She had her reasons. Waking up somewhere unfamiliar bothered her. She didn't want the hassle of rushing for work. She was okay with a casual encounter but wary of what might happen afterward. The possibility of an unexpected wife did not appeal to her. And the main reason? They never invited her to stay. She mentioned that for many of her encounters, the time it took for her to leave was what they considered to be forever. One evening, while Patty and I were at a bar, 2 men approached us. One seemed interested in Patty, and the other tried to engage me in conversation, which I initially ignored until Patty pulled me aside. "For heaven's sake, Carmen, this guy is really into you," she exclaimed. "So what?" I replied. "I'm not attracted to him." "But why not?" she pressed. "He may not be Alan, but he's not terrible, and it's been ages since you've been with anyone." "It's been what, 8 months? Can't you just pretend to be interested so I can have a good night?" We returned to our company, and I made an effort to chat with the man. Honestly, he didn't catch my interest. When he made a move, I felt nothing, which should have been a sign. I felt no spark, no excitement. Eventually, we ended up at one of their places. "Your wife has great taste," I commented. "I'm divorced," he quickly corrected, more for Patty's benefit than mine. "Really?" I countered. "Because I was looking for a towel and stumbled upon a whole collection of women's items in your laundry closet." "I'm separated," he corrected himself. "Look, it really doesn't matter to me," I said, trying to keep my cool. Patty shot me a look that could freeze fire before she and her date disappeared upstairs, leaving me in the company of his friend. He slid closer with a grin, his hand finding its way to my leg. I quickly told him that wasn't okay. Come on, just relax and enjoy yourself, he tried to convince me, his voice tinged with desperation. But honestly, my mind was elsewhere. Glancing at my watch, I noted, it's 10:30. I've got a schedule to keep if I'm going to catch Lino at 11:30. 15 minutes to drive home, another 10 to slip into my pajamas, and 5 more for a quick drink and popcorn. That leaves you 30 minutes to make this evening worth my while. He attempted to reignite the moment with another unsolicited touch, sparking a memory of when such advances, wanted or not, would stir something in me. A fleeting thought of Alan brought a brief flutter of excitement. But this guy, he wasn't sparking anything. His persistence turned predictable, his hands wandering without the finesse or intrigue Alan had. It wasn't just his lack of skill, I was feeling nothing. Noticing my distraction, he asked, "How much time do I have?" 6 minutes, I replied, unimpressed. He made a last-ditch, crude suggestion, which I countered with sarcasm, referring to my actual cat back home. Skirt adjusted, I decided it was time to leave. Heading out, the unmistakable sound of a squeaky bed from upstairs halted me briefly. The guy, now sulking on the couch, caught the sound too. "Tell Patty I've left," I said, not looking for trouble. "Tell her yourself," he retorted bitterly. His posture screamed defiance, but I chose silence over confrontation, slipping out quietly. Patty confronted me the next day with a "thanks a lot," to which I simply responded, "You seemed happy enough when I left." "Oh, the unforgettable encounter with the less than impressive partner," she said with a hint of sarcasm. "He tried his best for what seemed like an eternity, but it was like there was nothing there. I was silently hoping for it to be over. It reached a point where it was just uncomfortable, and I found myself searching for some kind of solution in the drawer. What I found instead was an abundance of performance-enhancing pills, more than you'd see in a drugstore. And to top it off, when we finally finished, we were greeted by his friend downstairs, who was visibly upset and throwing around insults left and right. My partner felt so sorry for his friend that he suggested I console him in a way that made me question my value to him. It was as if he saw me as nothing more than an object. He looked me straight in the eyes with a tone that was trying to be persuasive. "Why not make Sam's day a bit better?" he suggested. When I firmly refused, Sam accused me of being uninterested in men altogether. I ended up having to call a taxi to leave, and in the rush, I left without all my belongings. I just hope his partner finds them. "Patty, I meant to tell you I was leaving, but it seemed like a bad time," I explained. That fall, we found ourselves in a few similar situations. I ended up in encounters that left me feeling regretful. There was one time it went too far, and I vowed never to let that happen again. Patty tried to convince me it was a misunderstanding, but the experience was frightening and painful. The next day, when we talked, the conversation took a turn I hadn't expected. "Carmen, do you think you might not be interested in men?" she asked. I had to pause. After my divorce, I'd been on dates with numerous men, but none sparked any real interest. "I'm not sure," I admitted. "It's something I've been questioning." Patty suggested a way to explore my feelings, but when it came down to it, I couldn't go through with it. It wasn't for me. My experience with men had been different, but this was a boundary I couldn't cross. "Thanks a lot," Patty remarked as she moved towards the shower. "You made a mess in my room. I'll go clean up, and you can take care of the sheets." That incident made my feelings clear, far beyond any doubt. A few weeks passed, and Patty decided we needed to talk. I was anxious about the upcoming spring, especially since my daughter was finally set to get married. The wedding had faced its share of delays but now seemed on track. The last thing I wanted was to attend my daughter's wedding alone. It had been over a year since I last spoke to my husband, and I had been toying with the idea of asking Joy to seat me near her father at the event. It seemed like a smart solution, allowing me to extend an olive branch for past mistakes and navigate the day without the awkwardness of being solo. Lately, he'd been on my mind a lot. Not in a romantic sense, but I found myself missing the companionship we shared, the comfort of waking up together, and the security of knowing someone cared for me deeply. Living with Patty had opened my eyes to the many things I had taken for granted. Like the times Alan would stay home from work just to be by my side when I was under the weather. Approaching 50, I knew I could manage being sick alone, but his gestures of love were something I missed dearly. Then, one day, Patty came home with what seemed like groundbreaking news. "Carmen, we're friends, right?" she began. "Of course, Patty," I responded. "We've been like family since high school." "That's what I thought," she continued, hesitantly. "I need to ask you something, and I'm not sure how you'll feel about it." "Let's hear it," I encouraged. "Well, I was picking up some wine for our movie night and heard this familiar sound as I parked. Looking up, I saw Alan arriving. I've always found him charming, and it looks like he might be seeing someone. He was buying doubles of everything. How would you feel if I went out with him?" she inquired. For the first time in months, I felt a surge of emotion. Though I remained silent, the idea of Patty dating Alan stirred a mix of anger and discomfort within me. The thought of them together was unsettling. "I don't have his contact details," I finally said, dodging the heart of the matter. "Oh, don't fret about that," she reassured me. "Joy will be over later to discuss the wedding details with you. She called earlier to confirm." The thought circled in my mind, and the more I pondered, the less I found myself warming to the idea. Yet, Patty is my dearest friend, and the last thing I wanted was to cause her any distress, so I kept my reservations to myself. True to her word, my daughter arrived later on. We went over the final touches for her big day and talked about when the rehearsals would commence. I realized I hadn't been as involved in the planning as I perhaps should have been, which left me feeling a bit guilty. She mentioned that certain traditional elements would be skipped to spare her father's and my feelings. For instance, she assured me there would be no discomfort for me as I wouldn't have to sit beside her father, nor would there be a dance with him. "But I don't mind being next to your father," I mentioned. "And a single dance wouldn't hurt. It's not like he's known for his dancing skills." She just gave me a look and shook her head. "He's not the issue," I persisted. "He's notorious for stepping on my toes." Yet, she continued to shake her head. "Mom, it's not about that," she clarified. "Dad actually didn't want to dance with you. He's quite the dancer now, but he was worried about Selena feeling left out." That's when my head began to throb. "Who on earth is Selena?" I demanded, feeling a sudden wave of heat wash over me. My speech felt slurred, and my balance failed me as I tried to stand for an explanation, only for my leg to collapse beneath me. From there, everything turned hazy. Joy quickly seated me and dialed for emergency services. The only thought racing through my mind was, who on earth is Selena? Several hours later, I awoke in a hospital room with my daughter and Patty by my side. They summoned a nurse upon my awakening. The nurse, followed by a doctor, checked my eyes and vitals, then asked me to perform some simple tasks. Despite my frustration, I complied, albeit with a bit of unnecessary force. He was speaking to me as if I were a child. "Could you say something for me?" he requested, his tone overly patient. "Joy, who on earth is Selena?" I blurted out. "She's communicating very clearly and effectively," he observed. "Her motor skills and speech are intact. And she hasn't lost any memories," Joy added. "She picked up right where we left off." "Yeah, but her blood pressure is going right back up," the doctor mentioned. "Maybe a calming conversation could help." He left to attend to other duties, leaving me with Joy and Patty. "Mom, remember the trip Dad took just after the divorce?" Joy inquired. "Let me guess, he found someone new," I retorted sharply, surprising both Patty and Joy with my anger. "Mom, please try to stay calm, or we might need to ask for medical assistance," Joy warned. Seeing my attention, she continued, "Dad did meet some folks on that trip, but not Selena. He connected with people from his car club. They're enthusiasts of all ages who share a passion for cars like Dad's. It was good for him, got him active and social again. Watching him withdraw was heartbreaking." "I'm calm," I insisted. "I remember all that. So, I'm the villain here. Just tossed him aside, did I? Can we get to the point?" "Right, so a few weeks into it, Selena came into the picture at one of their gatherings. She drives a new Camaro, a gift from her husband. She's a mom to a young boy, and they're often seen together. Initially, their friendship was platonic, sharing interests in dance, cars, and outdoor activities. Dad even helps with her son's baseball team. She's genuinely kind and even got involved in the wedding planning. If you'd meet her, Mom, I think you'd find a friend. After all, there's no conflict between you two. Dad wasn't what you wanted, but she might appreciate him." The idea of Selena bothered me, even though we'd never met. Over the next couple of days, the hospital conducted numerous tests and diagnosed me with a mild stroke. I was also found to have high blood pressure and a significant hormone imbalance. They started me on medication for the blood pressure, suggesting lifestyle changes could eventually eliminate the need for it. Hormone therapy began while I was in the hospital, leading to an intense longing for my past relationship. I was set to leave the hospital just before Joy's final wedding rehearsal. My dress was tailored to fit me in the hospital, and the dietary changes had already shown results. I queried Joy on her father's absence during my hospital stay, and her response was a mix of confusion and concern. "Mom, have you forgotten the depth of hurt you inflicted on him?" she posed. "It's a miracle he's even considering attending the wedding. I was worried it might be a case of choosing between you two." "What do you mean?" I inquired. "I feared the wedding would force me to choose. Either you would attend, or he would," she explained. "The thought of having both of you there seemed impossible." "Joy, I never held any resentment towards your father," I clarified. "My affection for him never waned. The idea of us both being there for your day doesn't bother me in the slightest." "I know, Mom," she responded. "Well, mostly, it was actually him. The declarations of your dwindling affections and how he no longer moved you, those words cut him deep. The thought of facing you was too much for him." "I was mistaken," I admitted. "How so?" she probed. "Joy, my heart still holds a place for your father. I'm looking forward to seeing him, to telling him so," I shared. "Mom, please don't stir up trouble at my wedding," she cautioned sharply. "I won't hesitate to have you removed if you disrupt anything. This marriage means everything to me. I've found my partner, the one I'm ready to commit to for life. Do you understand?" I pleaded. "Yes, Mom," she sighed. "I've had long conversations with Aunt Patty. She filled me in on everything. You yearn for freedom, and once you had it, you found yourself seeking something new, as you did with Dad. But now, with him finding his own peace, you seem ready to revisit the past. No, love, I smiled gently. I was struggling with a health issue, one that left me feeling detached, unable to experience or express any form of passion or affection. But, thanks to treatment, I'm starting to feel like myself again. That's reassuring to hear, Mom, she said, a bit more at ease. I'm happy you're on the mend. But please, heed my warning. Any upset to Dad or Selena, any disruption to my wedding, and I'll have no choice but to ask you to leave and cut our ties. She simply shook her head as she walked away. I couldn't shake the feeling that my daughter doubted me. It seemed like she thought I was playing tricks on her, perhaps tired of being on my own and longing for the stability my husband offered. Later, Patty swung by to drive me home, fussing a bit about having to collect all my various prescriptions. Most of the medication was temporary, meant to last just a month or so. Beyond that, it was just the hormones and blood pressure pills. Our errand list included picking up specific foods for my diet. Curious, I asked Patty what was bothering her. She shared her frustration about not finding a perfect date for the wedding. To Patty, Joy was almost like the daughter she'd never have, playing a significant role in the ceremony, complete with a professional hair and makeup session. I teased, why not bring along one of your casual acquaintances from the bar? Carmen, those guys steer clear of weddings. Our age group is mostly married, divorced, or permanently single. None of them are keen on attending weddings. Those avoiding marriage see it as a nudge they're not keen on. Married men avoid them, wary of being spotted by someone who might know their spouse. It looks like I might need to hire a companion, which is embarrassing. Even if no one else knows, I'll be aware that I couldn't find a date on my own, she explained. But Patty, we're not exactly short on invitations, I countered. We could go out more if we chose to, but we don't. She gave me a long look, then asked, Carmen, do you actually understand what a date is? I was starting to feel irritated with everyone treating me as if I were clueless. Of course, I do, I retorted. Didn't we just go on one last week? Carmen, she said more softly, we don't really go on dates. A true date is when someone is genuinely interested in getting to know you, wanting to spend time together to discover more about each other. It could be dinner, a movie, or anything else. The goal is to make a connection. What we've been doing, Carmen, is not dating, it's just casual meetups. I stared back at her as she clarified, on a real date, the focus is on the time spent together. Sure, there might be hopes for more if the evening goes well, but the date itself is what matters. We meet guys at bars or clubs. They don't woo us or spend lavishly on us. If we leave with them, it's understood that intimacy is expected. They're not looking to learn about us, Carmen. They're just seeking a physical connection. Remember how, in our youth, we were the center of attention, and how we viewed those who seemed too eager in the nightlife scene. Well, we're not far from that now. We're not at the point of desperation, but we're open to giving anyone who seems decent enough a chance. Maybe that's your approach, I countered. But I'm focused on winning back my husband. Patty looked skeptical. I hope for the best for you. He truly loved you once. But Carmen, the hurtful things you said have left a mark. If he hasn't moved past that, I doubt your chances are strong. You haven't seen him recently, have you? I shook my head. Carmen, he looks rejuvenated, as if he's been taking even better care of himself, shedding a few pounds and moving with more energy. He's always been in shape, but now there's a new vibrancy to him. I saw him smiling constantly at the supermarket. But I understand Alan, I insisted. Once he hears me out and understands my perspective, we'll reconcile and start anew. The wedding rehearsal tomorrow night marks the beginning of our renewed journey together. And what about the men you've been with? She probed. Will you tell him about them? It might be best to leave that out, I suggested. But it'll come out eventually, she warned. And ignoring it might backfire. If he hears it from someone else, it could ruin everything. You're hoping to remarry, right? Obviously, I replied. We never should have split up. Then honesty is key, she advised. Otherwise, it might seem like we're just seeking attention out of desperation, which is worse. Loneliness is a harsh reality. Dressed up, we headed to the church for the wedding rehearsal the next day, learning our roles and coordinating with latecomers to ensure everything would run smoothly for the actual event. Another aspect that irked me was when the wedding planner suggested, after the bride and groom share their dance, it's customary for their parents to dance next. Joy would firmly decline, that's not happening. The planner, puzzled, would press on, but why? It's a lovely tradition and quite enjoyable. Imagine, decades from now, watching your wedding video and seeing yourselves in your parents' shoes. The thing is, my dad wouldn't be caught dancing with my mom, Joy explained. And there's nothing that could make me force him to, not for all the riches in the world. I'm on the same page, her fiancé Ted chimed in. Don't fret over it, love, she reassured him, gently caressing his cheek. I momentarily felt as if I had vanished from their presence. All right, we'll omit the parents' dance, the planner reluctantly agreed with her assistant. Later, I managed to pull Joy aside for a chat. Where's your dad? Shouldn't he be here for the rehearsal? I inquired. Don't stress, Mom, she reassured me with a smile. Dad and I have practiced the aisle walk plenty, and Selena's got her roll down pat. They're off to a car exhibition in Texas. Selena's role. What's she doing exactly? I've never seen a wedding role designated for the bride's father's companion, I probed. Mom, let's not stir up trouble, Joy cautioned. Today is about the bride. My day, not yours. You had your moment. Selena's lending a hand with several tasks behind the scenes. She's assisting with my veil, ensuring everything is in place for my entrance, and coordinating the start of the ceremony. She's essentially handling the tasks that you're unable to. So, she's taking on duties typically meant for the mother of the bride. I couldn't help but remark sharply. Not at all, Mom, she replied, a hint of frustration in her voice. You're still playing the visible role of the bride's mother. Selena is just covering the groundwork that you're unable to post-stroke. She's not trying to overshadow anyone, she's here to help. Nonetheless, she'll probably catch eyes. Have you discussed the dance and seating arrangements with your father? I continued. Removing the parents' dance seems like an oversight. And sitting next to your father for just a short while during the ceremony shouldn't be an issue. It's a few dances and moments of proximity. Surely he wouldn't oppose that. Well, Mom, it's not your wedding, she responded with a hint of defiance. I appreciate your input, but ultimately, it's my call to make. Dad said he'd support whatever I choose because he loves me. I can't ask him to be part of something he's not comfortable with, so we're doing it this way. During the rehearsal, Patty noticed a few guests she was interested in getting to know better. She figured the wedding would be the perfect opportunity to meet and possibly share a dance or conversation with one of them. Determined to stand out, she chose a bright yellow dress that she revealed only on the wedding day. I thought it was a tad short for our age group, but the color was appealing. I, too, decided to put my best foot forward. If I was going to win my husband back from this Selena, I needed to make an effort. I was convinced that Selena couldn't possibly be more appealing than me. I asked Ted for his opinion on my appearance. He hesitated, then told me I looked good for my age. When I inquired about Selena, his discomfort was evident. He said she looked okay, clearly trying to spare my feelings. From that, I gathered I had at least an equal, if not better, chance of winning Alan's attention. Reflecting on Selena, I considered that motherhood might have changed her figure, and her tomboyish nature, given Alan met her through a car club, didn't necessarily spell glamour. With no one praising her beauty over her kindness, I felt confident about my chances once Alan saw me in full glamour. I visited Patty's stylist for a hairstyle makeover and scheduled a makeup session alongside Patty. I also bought a striking pink dress, not as daring as Patty's, but enough to make a statement. On the wedding day, our spirits were high. Dressed and made up, Patty and I arrived at the church, turning heads. Our dresses clearly outshone the more subdued outfits of other guests, affirming our roles as the bride's family. We received many admiring looks. Compared to some overly modest guests, we were a breath of fresh air. At the church entrance, a woman distributing programs caught my eye. She was elegantly dressed in a suit that tastefully highlighted her figure without revealing too much, a perfect blend of sophistication and style. Her smoky chestnut brown hair and striking green eyes complemented her attire, making her stand out as possibly a chic relative of the groom lending a hand. She handed me a program as I walked in and complimented my dress warmly. She shared the same kind words with Patty, and we exchanged pleased glances. That was a charming lady, Patty observed. Indeed, she was, I concurred. Entering the church with Patty, it felt as though all eyes were on us. Patty scanned the crowd for a friend she'd noticed during the rehearsal dinner. We settled in our seats, but not long after, Patty leaped up, excitedly signaling to someone she recognized. Her enthusiasm faded fast, though, when she realized he wasn't alone. He's married, Patty muttered, disappointment lacing her tone. I stood to fetch some water for my medication and saw the welcoming woman still by the entrance, alone. Curious, I asked why she hadn't joined the rest of us inside. She mentioned she was waiting for her date, who was running a bit late. Ah, the timeless dance of waiting or rushing, I mused. True, but he's worth the wait, she replied, her smile widening ever so slightly. It made me reflect on my own younger days, wondering if I had ever been that openly smitten. Returning to the ceremony, a young usher guided Patty and me to a room where Joy, my daughter, was preparing. En route, we overheard derogatory comments about our appearance. I was fuming, determined to confront the rudeness, especially on such a significant day. Joy looked absolutely stunning as she appeared, her attire flawless, thanks to Selena's exquisite craftsmanship. Mother, Aunt Patty, what are these outfits? Joy asked, clearly upset. Why would you choose these? What's wrong? I inquired, genuinely puzzled. Patty simply shrugged, equally confused. It slowly dawned on us that our choice of attire clashed dramatically with the day's elegant theme. Joy, in her delicate white dress accented with pale peach, and her bridesmaids in harmonious colors, stood in stark contrast to our overly vibrant selections. Please, just find a discreet spot at the back for now, Joy pleaded. Perhaps you can change before the reception, something more fitting for the photos. Patty and I quietly made our way back into the church, choosing to sit at the very last row instead of our original spots up front. As we walked past each row, I could feel eyes on us, not openly staring but definitely sneaking glances. It was like walking through a room filled with barely suppressed laughter. It could have been worse, Patty remarked. We could have been the talk of the town for all the wrong reasons. Let's face it, Patty, I replied, we're already the center of attention. And then, as if on cue, things took another turn. The church doors were left open, welcoming the warm spring breeze, and that's when I heard it, the unmistakable sound of Alan's car approaching. He looked different, better somehow. His hair was shorter, embracing the natural gray with a stylish cut that suited him perfectly. I knew it, Patty said, catching the way I couldn't take my eyes off him as he approached the church. My attempt at playing it cool vanished as I saw him. I couldn't help but smile, perhaps a bit too enthusiastically. Alan's presence seemed to electrify the atmosphere as he made his way up the steps. I tried to look away, to appear indifferent, but inside, I was anything but. Seeing him after so long stirred something in me, a mix of anticipation and excitement. Then, an unexpected twist, Alan wasn't alone. A commotion at the entrance caught our attention, a playful exchange that hinted at something more. When Alan finally entered, the sight of him escorting another woman, her hand linked with his, dimmed my spirits instantly. I sat there, trying to mask my disappointment as the ceremony began, a stark contrast to the joy and beauty unfolding before us. The wedding was moving, evoking tears for more reasons than one. After the ceremony, tensions rose rather than eased. Joy was keen on capturing some moments at the church, and Patty thought it would be nice to have a photo of the bride with her mom. Everyone agreed it sounded lovely. However, both Joy and the photographer were hesitant. The stark difference between Joy's elegant wedding dress and my vibrant attire was too striking. Alan whispered something to Selena, and without hesitation, she offered me her jacket. Her gesture was swift and her smile steady, a testament to her willingness to go the extra mile to please my husband. It echoed the way he had always treated me. Despite being slightly taller, Selena's frame was much more petite than mine, to the point where I struggled to fit into her jacket. The photographer ended up taking several shots of Alan with Joy, and even one with Selena, which irked me immensely. It was only after Patty's persistence that a photo of Joy and me was taken. I made sure to stand close to her, suggesting a close-up to avoid highlighting my dress. I was determined to discard that dress the moment I got home. After the photo was taken and I stepped back, a collective gasp filled the air. Turning to Joy, I noticed a glaring mark of my makeup on her face. Confused, Joy sought clarity, and upon seeing her reflection, she was just as surprised. Don't worry, Selena chimed in, I can fix that. Let's step aside, it'll be quick. As Joy and Selena left, I saw an opportunity to speak with Alan. Gathering my courage, I turned to find him, only to discover he had moved on to guide guests to the reception, cheerfully reminding them of the open bar and the evening ahead. Alan's evident joy was the most striking thing to me. Patty inquired if I was up for the reception or preferred to head home, noting her own dismay as her interests had arrived with companions. Despite our bruised feelings, we decided to attend the reception, clinging to a sliver of hope for the evening. The reception turned out to be a lively affair with a band that played an array of music, catering to all tastes. Watching Alan and Selena dance with such ease left me in awe, my surprise mirrored by Patty, who was quick to snap me back to reality. Joy, how did your dad pick up those dance moves? I couldn't help but ask. He and Selena joined a dance class, she explained. He kept asking me to join one with him, I shared. You probably should have, Mom, Joy suggested. They seem to be having a blast. Yeah, I agreed. They do seem to be enjoying themselves. At the dinner, my mood took a turn for the worse as I listened to the conversations. Ted and Joy were excited about a cruise. It turns out my husband and Selena had been on a similar trip, and she was brimming with advice on what they should do. After the newlyweds departed, I lingered, sipping my drink and watching the dance floor. The atmosphere felt heavy, so much so that I barely noticed when he approached. I didn't want to leave without having a word with you, he said. Turning around, I saw Alan there. I attempted a smile, rehearsing in my mind what I wanted to say. This was my moment. The documents confirming my medical condition were even in my purse, ready to be shown if he doubted me. I planned to tell him I'd always loved him and that my earlier actions were due to a temporary imbalance. I never meant what I said, and I hoped we could return to how things were before. Before you start, let me say something, he interjected. I nodded, encouraging him to continue. I've come to understand, he began, that when everything unfolded, it felt like the end for me. I've loved you deeply for the longest time. Imagining a life without you was unthinkable. I'd often wished I hadn't gone back for my iPod that day. Then I wouldn't have overheard that conversation, and perhaps we'd still be together. Wouldn't that be something? I responded. No need for sarcasm, he replied. I knew you'd react this way, which is why I hesitated to speak. But I'm here to express my gratitude. Initially, all I wanted was for you to tell me it was all a misunderstanding, that you wanted us to reconcile. Later, I heard rumors about you out socializing and connecting with many people. Initially, it felt like a harsh blow. I even encountered a few who claimed they had met you out. I was upset, but eventually, I realized it was jealousy. After all, you and I have a history, and it took us time to grow close, he concluded with a shrug. Suddenly, it dawned on me, I had come to understand so much more. Over the past 25 years, both you and I had evolved significantly. Perhaps the issue wasn't entirely with you, maybe it lay with me as well. You had desires and aspirations that I couldn't quite align with. You were eager to explore life more broadly and experience things that were beyond my comfort zone. As I prepared to interject, to clarify that his perception was far from my reality, he continued, insistent on finishing his thought. "Let me finish," he said, his voice firm. "You knew I wasn't ready for such a lifestyle. My love for you was so deep that the mere thought of you with someone else was unbearable. But you, understanding this, chose the most respectful path. Instead of betraying me, you made the tough decision to end our marriage. That way, as a single person, you were free to pursue your own path. I mean, to spread your wings and discover a new chapter in your life. I'll admit, I harbored bitterness for a long while. Even post-divorce, I harbored hopes of reconciliation. Eventually, I realized that our paths had diverged too significantly. After everything, I couldn't see myself being enough for someone with your experiences. What I need, Carmen, is simplicity and fidelity. I'm devoted to one person, and I seek someone who shares that devotion. You and I, we couldn't find happiness together again. Reflecting on our last years together, I recognized our mutual misery. I longed for a partner to share in my ventures and interests. When Selena came into my life, everything changed. She's my perfect match. I'm looking forward to a future with her, despite her questionable taste in vehicles. It was your courage to acknowledge our unhappiness that led us to where we are now, both of us happier. You, embracing your independence, and me, finding my soulmate. For that, I'm truly grateful. Before I could voice my objections, to argue against his misconceptions, she appeared. Swiftly, she took the glass from his hand, a reminder of their shared commitment to health. "We don't drink alcohol, honey, we're training," she reminded him gently. "Did I just hear my name?" "I was just commenting on your unique taste in cars to Carmen," he responded with a light-hearted smile. "Oh, honey," she started, a playful tone in her voice. "The only real difference between our cars is the price tag and that little logo." "Exactly, you paid more but missed out on the performance and the view," he teased back. "All I need to see is you," she replied affectionately, making it clear their bond was strong. As she turned to me, extending her hand in greeting, the sweetness of their interaction was almost too much. Their connection was palpable, a stark contrast to the distance between us. "I'm Selena," she introduced herself warmly. "Selena Johnson. I assured you he was a catch." "Lena, meet Carmen," Alan chimed in, "my former wife. And Joy's mom." Selena greeted me with a friendly smile and a reassuring pat on the shoulder, as if we were longtime acquaintances. "Wow," she laughed gently, "then you're already aware of his charm. And your daughter, she's quite the gem. You've done a wonderful job with her. It's clear she inherits her spark from you." She seemed completely at ease, not bothered or threatened by my presence, holding onto Alan's hand firmly as though it was a symbol of their union. "Did you mention your name was Selena Johnson?" Patty inquired, stepping closer. I was momentarily lost for words, my mind trying to catch up. With a bright smile, Selena showcased a striking ring. "We tied the knot in Texas," she revealed. "We kept it under wraps, not wanting to overshadow Joy's milestone. It's her moment to shine, and we believe in letting the younger ones take the spotlight." "And your age?" I managed to ask. 35, she replied with a sweet demeanor. "It was truly a pleasure to finally meet you, Carmen," Selena said. "Perhaps you and Patty would like to join us for a small barbecue at our place once the kids return from their honeymoon. Our home is cozy, so it'll be an intimate gathering of just the 7 of us, the newlyweds, us, you two, and our son. I'll have Joy get in touch with the details once she reaches out from their vacation." "Joy's planning to call you from their trip?" I questioned. "We're in touch daily," she explained. "Initially, it was her checking in to ensure I was kind to her dad. But our relationship has grown from there." Watching them leave together, arm in arm, I struggled to contain my emotions. Patty gently led me away, back to the car. Once home, I frantically searched online for the article that had turned my world upside down. Although I found references, the original piece and the author's name eluded me. But I was determined to find it. Nothing ever truly disappears online. And when I do, I plan to take legal action against the person who appended my life. Yet, life marches on, and I've no choice but to adapt. Despite my initial reluctance, seeing Alan and Selena's evident joy together is something I've come to accept. Surprisingly, Selena and I have forged a kind of friendship. She affectionately refers to Joy, herself, and me as the Johnson ladies, frequently organizing social gatherings and ensuring Patty is also included, treating her as an honorary member of our circle. Now, both Selena and Joy are expecting. They share their joy and anticipation freely, a constant reminder of life's ongoing cycle. It seems I'm on the brink of becoming a grandmother and, in an unusual twist, something akin to an ex-aunt-in-law to Selena's child. Like I mentioned before, I really wish I could be upset with her for being wise enough to recognize and value what I carelessly let go of, but I just can't. She brings a level of joy to Alan that I never managed to achieve. However, it wouldn't be natural if I didn't try to mend things. Without Alan knowing, I sat down for a heartfelt conversation with Selena, which turned out to be quite enlightening for me. During our talk, I opened up about my feelings for him and shared my health struggles, which had led to my past mistake. It might seem naive, but Selena's incredibly kind nature made me hope that, perhaps, we could all come together and address the situation as mature adults. That was the first time I witnessed Selena visibly upset and frustrated. She sincerely expressed her regret for the difficulties I faced and recognized that my situation wasn't entirely my fault. Yet, she firmly stated that understanding my circumstances wouldn't change her commitment to Alan, making it clear that she wouldn't stand for any interference, regardless of her condition. After that, our interactions cooled off, and the frequent gatherings we used to enjoy became scarce. I could sense Selena was upset with me. But, after some time, she reached out, inviting me over for a casual barbecue. Surprisingly, she apologized, and although I acknowledged my part in the tension, she believed her reaction was also to blame. We reconciled with a hug, feeling a mutual sense of relief. Little did I know, my evening was about to get even better. As I admired their quaint yet stunning pool and the landscaping efforts they were making, Selena introduced me to a gentleman as her sister at heart, a different kind of family bond. He was her widowed uncle, and we hit it off, eventually starting to date. He's somewhat older than me but a genuinely nice person. He's not Alan, and I don't expect him to be, but we share a lot in common, including health habits and a laid-back approach to life. We joke about one day looking after Alan and Selena's kids while they're out living their adventurous lives. Our relationship is calm and understanding, a significant improvement in my eyes. Ultimately, I found myself in a much better place than I could have hoped for. But to all you women out there who are in a stable marriage or one that could be improved with a bit of effort, remember two things. Firstly, not all advice from famous figures and self-help experts is golden. And secondly, better doesn't always mean happier. I'm still on the lookout for the person who wrote that misleading article, though. My comment, and the morale of this story is, be grateful for the good things in your life rather than wishing there were better.